Welcome to this special edition of the AmeriCorps Connections podcast. I'm Nikki Fiacco, the host of the AmeriCorps Connections podcast. I'm excited to share a special partnership with 250 and Beyond, Our American Story, to share a series of short stories from AmeriCorps alums about what service looks like in their communities today. These voices help amplify the spirit of service and remind us that across this country, people continue to show up for one another each and every day. So what is 250 and Beyond? 250 and Beyond, Our American Story is a national initiative dedicated to making service to others visible and valued in all its forms. By reflecting on our nation's history and elevating stories today to inspire the future, we aim to realize a vision of a nation united through service. Led by a coalition of leading service organizations, 250 and Beyond is a call to action, honoring our past, celebrating our present, and inspiring the future, helping us respect our differences and transcend our divisions. For all of those national service and AmeriCorps members out there, let's keep getting things done. I hope you enjoyed this series. Shawn, thank you for joining the AmeriCorps Connections podcast for this special co-branded 250 and Beyond special podcast series where we're focusing on what does service and volunteerism look like in your community. So Shawn, and we're also staying with the program where you are an AmeriCorps alum. So what we want to know is, who are you? Where are you in the United States? And what AmeriCorps program did you serve in? And what does service and volunteerism look like in your community today?
I love that. So I am Shawn Durnen. I am the current president and CEO of Nine Line Veteran Services, an organization I built from ground up 15 years ago now. To your point, Nikki, I am an AmeriCorps alum, and I was able to do the AmeriCorps State through the VETCO program out here with your Washington State Department of Veteran Affairs. And it was an amazing experience. And a lot of the things when it comes to volunteerism, being present, being part of a mission bigger than yourself, right? Which is the AmeriCorps goal, getting things done, being involved, being engaged. For me, it was just awesome. I had the opportunity to connect with people, and I was actually recruited out of college. That was the funny part. The director at the time, Alfie Alvarado Ramos, just amazing, retired Sergeant Major, served in the Army and the Nurse Corps, an incredible human being. And she was actually visiting the college I was at the time. And she came in and she's like, how would you like to be part of this? I love your energy. I love your vibe. Like, I think there's a group of people that may benefit from your service. And as a former service member, I just was getting through with my education. I didn't really have a general direction I really wanted to go. But when she offered me the opportunity to work with veterans on that real, like, grassroots level, engaged, helping them with some of their most high level immediate needs, I was like, yeah, count me in. So I actually did the service out here in Washington State, which is where myself and our colleagues are. And so what that looked like was doing service projects, getting out, getting involved, community youth, military service members, helping with different project rebuilds, helping with environmental science days where we'd go out and do like cleanup, water delineation. And at the time, my focus really was environmental science. So taking young people out to really help them understand what that impact has in not only nature around us, but our day-to-day living. And so tack that on with the relationship I had with my veteran community, it was the ability for me to be able to have really targeted, realistic conversations and help them understand how they can be part of the solution, right? We have this weird concept of like, oh, this is wrong, this is wrong. Well, if you shift that narrative and you have that solution-based thinking, it allowed me to go out and actually build out those tangible support nets. So during my tenure with AmeriCorps, I was able to go out and talk to the local housing authorities, talk to the VA, or in this case, U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, build out some of those support mechanisms, which to this day, we're cited on several of the papers and the practices and all the things that we're doing nationwide. So for me, it was a huge thing where like I got pulled in 10 different directions, but it was really about what's the impact you want to leave. And I think for me, that was really what my AmeriCorps service was about.
I just want to add to that that I feel to leverage a service year is to leverage those opportunities where you're put in front of people and it's like, make it happen, AmeriCorps member, and you're put in the room and you're pretty green and you're just taking chances. And what's cool is during a service year, it's almost like everybody's in your corner and they want to make it work too. I love that you said some of the projects that you work on that it's still named in these different services that are available. Talk to us a little bit about during that service year, any soft or hard skills that you gained during that service year. And then let's talk a little bit about if you're doing any service or how the thread of service and volunteerism runs through your life now.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. So, with military service and then again with AmeriCorps, I mean, people hear AmeriCorps and they know you are coming to get, I love that our motto is getting things done, but
Yeah.
you're really there to get things done. People don't understand that real practical application. So during my service year, one of the biggest things that I kept running into was really that one-on-one personal interactions with people. I didn't realize how many people were going to be willing to share their stories, really open up and have those vulnerable moments. They just met you, but they know what you represent. So when people would come across my threshold, we're identifying what their immediate needs are, whether it was housing disparities, economic disparities, daycare, childcare, a neighborhood that needed some love or something along those lines. And so by the time it would come to me, it was, okay, how do I have these conversations and what space it's going to be okay to have these conversations? One thing really stuck out to me in that service year was you're not always going to have funding to support all the things you want. So for me, I took it upon myself with some support from the state VISTA programs and all the different things to take some grant writing classes. Because the grant writing piece was, how do we help communities that do find themselves in very big social economic issues? And so I was actually able to write down all these different ideas, meet with local leadership, and they're like, well, if you want to do this, that's great. Here's who you should partner with, or here's who you should talk to. That willingness to be that community push and that real labor of love spoke to me. And again, as a military service member, my background is leadership. Like that's what we're service, continued service, make the change that you want to see. And so when I came over to that AmeriCorps side of it, it just furthered that inspiration and that fire to want to do more. And that's really my big takeaway. Like, how do I leverage the community supports to connect with the right people? One of the adjunct professors at University of Washington is great experience, sat me down and gave me an 8-hour long grant writing course. So awesome. And so 2 weeks later, I started writing up some of these different grants. And I had a family who had actually come to me. They were transitioning, didn't have a plan, didn't have an idea of what to do. And I was like, well, it just so happens I'm like applying for this big grant that the federal government's writing and that, they want to be a part of this. And so we did. And they were actually one of the first clients that came through the program for sustainable housing. So it was kind of that full circle to your point,
so cool.
aha moment. Yeah. And it makes just the great feeling of coming through. Yeah, like I got that done. That was me. So it was really cool for me, but that lived experience and then being able to help another military service member and their family and see that gratitude, like as a business owner now and a social worker, like I don't get to see the tangible end result every time. But when you do get that glimpse, it's not even a question of why we do what we do. It's a question of how do we continue to improve those services? How do we continue to educate people on those services? And how do we continue to uplift and support our most at-risk and at needs? It's been a blessing. And that really was, for me, like the biggest aha moment. I learned this, I applied this, and I got to see what the outcome was. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah, it's like seeing karma in real time. And sometimes people think of karma as bad, but karma is just the outcome of the energy that you put in at some point and then it's coming to fruition. That's amazing. And being able to see your efforts it's just so refreshing and nice. And it does keep you going. And sadly, our phones and everything is created to have dopamine hits. And the biggest dopamine hit for me is like when I can make a really cool connection or help somebody. Thank you for sharing your AmeriCorps experience. And generally, during the AmeriCorps Connections regular broadcasted programming, we would spend a lot of time there. But we want to get down to it's 250 and beyond. Our country was founded 250 years ago. And folks, I just want to acknowledge that, like, we're recording this during a really crazy time in the United States. So full acknowledgement. And also, but we're hoping that we can take the spirit of service and community care with us 250 years down the road. So I can't think of a better conversation than having this right now about how do we serve our communities? How are we volunteering? How are we just caring for each other and not asking for recognition and not necessarily asking for anything other than just uplifting our community. So what does that look like, Shawn, where you're at right now?
Well, no, absolutely. And that's an amazing question. And thank you for that, Nikki. You know, the beautiful thing about the West Coast, well, I mean, first and foremost, it's just gorgeous. So you got that going for you. But with the West Coast, people are very hospitable to each other. They're very kind. They're very deliberate. They're very meaningful in their message and their pride in community. So even though, to your point, this is by far none like the most cluster of things. It's a lot. But really, for me and my family and my community, my kids are actively engaged in volunteer service, whether that's going down to the local homeless shelter and seeing how they can help out in the kitchen or with laundry services or whatever that may look like. To my wife and I, who both have worked in social services for years, preparing hot meals and getting resources out to people and being present at different tabling events, being present at different legislative meetings, being present when it comes to having a voice for the voiceless. One of the tasks I am with right now is I sit as one of the chair members for the Greater Pierce County Continuum of Care, which is part of the homeless initiatives under the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, all those cool things. And it's really about sitting around with like-minded people, but those like-minded people can come from any walk of life. It's that very general will, very general concept. How do we help our community? And so whether it's someone with lived experience who may be going through homelessness or just running a bad time in their life, or someone who is a company owner, it's communicating between all the lines and having local law enforcement present, having local elected officials present, having local county members present, and then nonprofit leaders, and then different members of the community. And so having that collective voice and sitting down and having meaningful, uncomfortable conversations, and then universally those pluralisms, not about being right or wrong or who can, have the loudest voice. It's about finding a middle ground and making it work. And so here in Washington, you have so many kind people who just want to see everything good happen for the community. And so we get to sit around and have these conversations and build out these protocols and these procedures and advisory notes and send them up to our leaders who do have the dollar behind it and say, this is what we determined is a best practice. This is what we determined is the most likely outcome for this. But having that voice and then with that lived experience aspect, not that our local legislators aren't engaged, but how many of them actually get to be on the ground every day? And so having those voices and being able to articulate those things in a way that makes them understand, oh, this is what this actually looks like in real time. So for us, whether it's on that micro level engagement, boots on ground, cooking a hot meal, doing all the things, or it's on that macro level, like helping shape that picture for what the future generations can look forward to. It's just really a blessing. And it speaks to that spirit of this country. It speaks to that spirit of this community. And it speaks to what, again, for today, 250 years as a country. And then we're celebrating AmeriCorps and all these amazing things. But it speaks to the true essence behind volunteerism. It's not about, do we get the good feelings? Of course. It feels great to help people. But it really shows the tangible outcome of what that looks like. And that's the beauty of it. It's selfless, targeted service through kindness and community labor of love. Like, I will harp on that all day.
I appreciate how you added being a voice for the voiceless and being there for, not being there for, but being in the room with legislation, because there's a way to talk to our elected officials where they can hear us. And like you said, they're not always boots on the ground. They're not always in their community. So it takes somebody who's able to take the message of the community and talk to that elected official and have them understand the impact of some of the systems that might be in place, some of the policies, some of the protocol or whatever it might be. I want to highlight that because I think sometimes civic engagement isn't seen as community service or volunteerism, but it really is, right? Like showing up as a citizen and saying, this is how we want our community to, this is what we want our community to look like, and this is how we want to care for each other, and to hold our politicians' toes to the fire and be like, and friend, we asked you to go make sure that this happens. I really appreciate that you brought that up, because I think sometimes people are afraid of that, and then also might not feel like there's accessibility to our elected officials. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Well, no, I think you worded that perfectly. I mean, we talk all the time as members of this big community, right, about systemic barriers and marginalized populations and issues that everyone's facing. But then no one asks the question, how do I get involved? How do I make my voice heard? How do I help them understand? Because it really is apples and oranges. This person may speak English, this person speaks Spanish, and now we need someone in the middle who speaks Spanglish. So how do we help those people understand that? And then how do we help them understand, like, you can get involved, you can be a part of that solution? The tangible act of volunteering doesn't end with picking up a hammer and putting a nail in. Although, again, as someone who enjoys helping out in that aspect of the community, it feels great. You have a great day underneath your belt, and that does establish change too. In this aspect, to your point, that civic leadership is a core value of real change. So being part of those conversations and helping them understand, not only are you passionate about this, but you have the information, you have the tangible proof to show this is why this should happen. And it's again coming together with a unified voice for those voiceless, to your point, and helping people understand we can be that change, and helping them understand how they can get involved. I think that was one of the best things about my AmeriCorps service was like, I was green. I had no idea. I'm in this room with people who can make change. What do I do? And then they're like, no, just pay attention and learn this proper. Right? Like, and so becoming that coach and that mentor after I was coached and mentored, it continues to carry on that message forward. And I think that's one of the big pieces that people don't see when it comes to volunteer services. Be that strong advocate, that staunch voice for those who don't have one.
As we land the plane, which I keep putting myself on mute because I'm right in a flight pattern and all the planes are landing. So you serve the veterans community. Tell us a little bit about that population. There was a previous interview with your colleague Nijla.
Yes.
Nijla, right.
That'll be fine.
And she had mentioned that a lot of times service members have service first, so they don't feel comfortable necessarily taking on the services that they have, I don't know if earned is the right word, but is it earned, I guess?
Earned is a fair statement.
Yeah, through their service. But a lot of times they're like, but if I take this, then my fellow service member may not receive that amount. So I'm framing this question I want to hear from you about our veteran community and what is the best way for folks who are not engaged with the veteran community and don't know much about it. What can we do to support that community?
Well, I mean, with any community or any population, right, there's a certain level of cultural competency. So if you've never been in the military, it's hard to help people understand what that day-to-day life looks like. And then for service members, a group of people who have been told how to eat, walk, talk, dress every day of their military career, where to be, when to be, what mentality to have, and then switching that over to transitioning out and then having to learn all these different mechanisms. And I know for me, at least, when I got out, I was just, whoa, what do I do? It's just that real like culture shock. You
Yeah.
just went from this very, very unified family element to now you're out on your own. And if you enlisted when you were 18, all you've known most of your adult life is the military. But I have a grandfather. I have two different grandfathers who served. I have my father-in-law, my brother, and myself, all served in armed conflict. And so the biggest problem when we talk about how veterans view things, it's, service above self. It is this idea that we don't want, and I don't speak for the whole military community, but I will say that most veterans,
Of course.
Marines, Navy, Air Force, Army, whoever, there's this sense of pride, right? So we not only don't necessarily want to feel like we're part of this system of accountability where it's, oh, well, I need this and I need this. It's how do we continue to move forward? We've been very mission driven for so long. And then, proud Marine, I don't want to take this. It kind of feels like a handout. But anytime in the federal system that we talk about
Right.
budgeting, if you don't use it, you lose it. That's just universally known, right? And so I've had this experience over my tenure in this field where I've sat down my fellow service members and I'm like, look, I appreciate that you're looking out for your brother, your sister, all these people. But that same thought process you're having is the same thought process they're having. And if no one uses these benefits that you've earned through your service, then they're going to go away. Not to mention, if you're coming to me and you're saying, well, I may have food insecurities or I may have this, it would behoove you to, and for your family, it's really how you shape that narrative, right? A lot of the time, if it's just them, they're like, yeah, whatever, okay, no big deal.
Right.
But when you include their family, it's like, oh, yeah, I do care about my wife and I do care about my children. Well, then,
Right.
that's why this exists. And earned is the right statement because these are people who, whether you were a combat veteran, whether you just served during a peacetime, whether all these different elements, you still served. You still raised your hand and said, I'm willing to put my life on the line. And you made a promise to the government, you signed a contract, and you signed your life away for 4, 6, 12, 20, however many years. When you come out of the back end of that, they kept a promise in saying, this is what you will receive upon the end of your term of service. And so it's honoring that tradition of this is who we are. And a part of that issue is the military does a great job of training soldiers. It does not do a great job of creating civilians.
Yeah. That's a strong
So
statement.
I mean, and that's not a shot at the DOD or the military,
No.
but it's the truth.
Yeah.
And so when we come out, there's we call it the dreaded 90-day window.
Oh.
Yeah. And so it's like right as you get out, like there's no greater feeling than getting handed your DD-214 and you're like, I'm out.
Yeah.
But then 30, 60, 90 days, you're like, oh, I don't have a paycheck coming anymore. I need to go build a resume for the first time. I need to understand what business professional looks like. And it's this whole change, this culture shift. And so for me, I was able to meet people where they're at and help them understand, like, you're not losing that piece of you, but certain aspects of your life are going to become different in your day-to-day manageability. And so that's where I met people at, was that space I could relate to. I've gone down this road. It's not the same as your road you're on, but I understand that feeling of isolation. I understand that feeling of separation. I understand what it's like to have to, like, I used state assistance in one point because I was a broke college student, as many of us were. But state assistance and things like that to help support my children and myself and my family during that time. And then going from that to being able to build yourself back up. So you started this high point in your military career, you transition out, you hit these roadblocks in that dreaded 90-day window. And if you don't have the right support mechanisms, which again, like great things like AmeriCorps always should exist, you're not able to access or understand how those new systems work. But once you do, then you can start to elevate back up and build up that pathway again. But it really does come down to having those sometimes awkward conversations for me, which are my favorite, but having those very deliberate, meaningful conversations. And how do we get you from here to where you want to be? And that's the difference in when it comes to the military and military cultures, because we've been trained to be proud and not, take the proverbial handout. But I'm like, is it really a handout or is it really just that hand up?
I love that. Shawn, as we start to wrap, are there any last ideas or things that you want to say about service and volunteerism and what you see for our future?
I will say that volunteerism and national service saved my life. And it built a very targeted and strategic direction for my kids in understanding why we give back and what the importance of that is, right? We sometimes forget that we're all one paycheck away or one bad situation away from being on our behinds, I should say. And so I think that part of that is, programs like AmeriCorps not only instill a certain level of natural accountability, a certain level of humility, and then also a sense of pride in what you're doing and what you're doing for your community. And 250 years from now, I hope that similar-minded individuals like you and myself are able to continue having this conversation, because I think that national service, and again, AmeriCorps near and dear to my heart, um, is really the difference in how we as a society move forward.
Mic drop on that. Shawn, thank you. Thank you for being part of this special 250 and Beyond co-branded AmeriCorps Connections podcast. And everyone stay tuned, and we will have another AmeriCorps alum on this. And folks, I think we're tipping over 100 interviews. And I just want to say that's pretty freaking cool.
That is pretty freaking cool.
So until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe, because it actually really does matter. All right. Thanks, folks. See ya.